The lights dimmed. The audience settled into their seats. Margaret stood in the wings, her heart pounding so loud she was sure everyone could hear it. Dr. Chen stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder. "You've got this," he whispered, "just like we practiced. Just like you've been doing your whole life," the first performer went on. A young pianist from the New York Philharmonic. He played Chopin brilliantly. The audience applauded. Then the second performer. Then the third. Each one incredible. Each one a reminder of what Margaret could have been if life had gone differently. But life hadn't gone differently. And maybe that was okay. Maybe her path, hard as it had been, had made her into exactly who she needed to be for this moment. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice rang through the hall, "our final performer tonight needs no introduction. Her story has touched millions of hearts around the world. A Juilliard graduate, a Chopin competition winner, a woman who sacrificed her dreams to care for her dying mother, and spent decades sharing her gift quietly, humbly, while working to survive. Tonight, she reclaims her place on the stage she always deserved. Please welcome Margaret Williams." The applause was immediate and thunderous. Margaret stepped onto the stage and it grew louder. People were standing before she'd played a single note. Her daughters were crying. Professor Morrison had his hand over his heart. She walked to the piano, her legs shaking, and sat down. Adjusted the bench. Looked at the keys. These weren't the keys she'd dusted at the mansion. These weren't the cheap piano keys at the church basement. These were the keys of Carnegie Hall. The audience grew quiet, waiting. The silence stretched out and Margaret realized she was supposed to start. But she was frozen. All those years of buried dreams, all that pain, all that sacrifice. It was all right there, pressing down on her chest. She thought about her mother, about holding her hand in that hospital bed, about the choice she'd made. She thought about her daughters and how they'd turned out strong and kind. She thought about all the years of cleaning houses and staying invisible, and then she thought about that night at the mansion. How Mr. Patterson had asked her to play for fun, how dismissive he'd been, how small he'd tried to make her. She lifted her hands, and she played. She started with the Rachmaninoff piece from that night, the same piece that had stunned those wealthy guests. But this time she played it even better, more confident, more powerful. She poured everything into it. Every year of struggle, every moment of doubt, every dream deferred. The music filled the hall like a living thing. Her fingers flew across the keys. The audience sat mesmerized. This wasn't just technical skill. This was a soul speaking through sound. This was a life of pain and joy and survival turned into beauty. When she finished the Rachmaninoff, she didn't pause. She moved straight into Chopin, the same piece she'd played at the competition when she was 16. But she played it differently now. Then she'd played it with youth's passion and hope. Now she played it with experience and wisdom, with the understanding of someone who'd lived fully, even when life tried to break her. Tears streamed down faces in the audience. Not sad tears, moved tears, inspired tears. This was more than a concert. This was witnessing something profound, someone taking back what had been stolen from them. She played for 45 minutes straight. Rachmaninoff, Chopin, Beethoven, Bach, pieces she'd practiced in church basements, pieces she'd played for nursing home residents, pieces she thought no one important would ever hear her perform. But tonight everyone was hearing. Everyone was witnessing. Everyone was understanding that talent doesn't disappear just because life gets hard. It waits, it endures, it finds its moment. When she played her final note, the silence lasted for 3 full seconds. Then the audience exploded, everyone on their feet. Applause like thunder, people crying openly, shouting, some throwing flowers onto the stage. Margaret stood, overwhelmed, barely able to see through her own tears. She bowed. The applause grew louder. She bowed again. People weren't stopping. They weren't sitting down. Her daughters rushed the stage, security letting them through. They wrapped their arms around her, all 3 of them crying. "Mom," her oldest whispered. "Mom, you did it. You really did it." Professor Morrison was next, pulling her into a hug. "I always knew," he said. "I always knew you were special. I'm so sorry it took this long." The other performers came out too, joining the applause, showing respect. This was Margaret's night. Her moment. Her vindication. Backstage afterward, Margaret sat in a chair, exhausted and exhilarated. People streamed in to congratulate her. Dr. Chen brought her water. Diane brought her flowers. Even Mr. Patterson came, looking humbled and proud at the same time. "Thank you," he said simply. "Thank you for forgiving me, and thank you for showing me what real grace looks like." The fundraising numbers came in the next day. Between the concert tickets, the live stream donations, Mr. Patterson's contribution, and ongoing GoFundMe donations, they'd raised over $3 million. $3 million. After Margaret took what she needed to live comfortably, the rest went into the scholarship fund, the Margaret Williams Fund for music students facing family hardship. It would help dozens of students every year, maybe hundreds if they managed it right. But the money wasn't the biggest change. The biggest change was how people saw her now, and how she saw herself. She was offered teaching positions at 3 different universities. She chose to teach part-time at the local community college. "That's where students like me end up," she explained. "Kids who can't afford the fancy schools. Kids who work full-time while studying, those are the ones who need good teachers most." She also started performing regularly, not exhausting tour schedules, just concerts here and there, sometimes for pay, sometimes for charity, always for the love of music. Mr. Patterson had changed too. He'd started a foundation supporting service workers who had hidden talents or deferred dreams. He hired a full-time staff person just to talk to his employees, learn their stories, help them pursue their goals. His gardener. Turned out he'd been developing a revolutionary approach to sustainable urban farming. Mr. Patterson helped him patent it and start a business. The driver, who'd been a teacher, now running an English learning program for immigrants funded by Patterson's foundation. The chef, opening her own restaurant with Patterson as an investor. "Better late than never," Mr. Patterson said when a reporter asked him about his transformation. "I've spent my whole life not seeing people. Margaret taught me how to see." 6 months after the concert, Margaret was invited back to Juilliard, not as a student this time, as an honored alumna. They wanted to give her an award, host a concert, recognize what she'd accomplished despite the obstacles. She stood in the same practice rooms where she'd spent countless hours as a young woman, ran her hands over the same pianos. But she wasn't sad about what she'd lost anymore. She was grateful for what she'd gained. "I thought my life would be about performing in concert halls," she told the audience of students at Juilliard. "I thought success meant fame and recognition and playing for thousands of people. But you know what I learned? Success is survival. Success is using your gifts however you can. Success is making music even when no one important is listening, because the music matters anyway." She paused, looking at their young faces, so much like she'd been once, full of dreams and hope. "Some of you will have the career I was supposed to have. You'll perform on great stages. You'll be famous. You'll be celebrated. And that's wonderful. But some of you will face hardships. Life will get in the way. Dreams will be delayed or deferred. And when that happens, I want you to remember something. Your talent doesn't disappear just because circumstances change. Your gift doesn't become less valuable just because the world isn't paying attention." Her voice grew stronger. "Keep playing. In church basements. In nursing homes. In your tiny apartments. Keep playing. Because that music matters. Because your gift matters. Because you matter even when the world forgets to notice." The students gave her a standing ovation. Several were crying. They understood. They knew how fragile dreams could be, how quickly life could change. Margaret's daughters visited her often now. They'd watch her practice, amazed at their mother's skill, still processing everything they'd learned about her sacrifice. "Were you happy?" her youngest asked one day. "All those years working and sacrificing. Were you happy?" Margaret thought about that question carefully. "Happy isn't one thing," she finally said. "I was happy when I held you as babies. I was happy when I played piano at the church. I was sad when your grandmother died. I was tired a lot. I was frustrated sometimes. But was I happy? Yes, maybe not the happiness I'd planned on, but happiness nonetheless." She smiled at her daughter. "And now I get to have a different kind of happiness. I get to play. I get to teach. I get to help other people avoid what I went through. That's not nothing. That's everything." A year after the concert, Margaret performed at Carnegie Hall again. But this time she shared the stage with 5 scholarship recipients from her fund. Young musicians who'd faced their own hardships. Medical bills, family crises, circumstances that threatened to derail their dreams. She played a duet with a 19-year-old whose mother had died of the same cancer that took Margaret's mother. She accompanied a violinist who'd aged out of foster care and almost gave up music to survive. She mentored a pianist who'd been homeless for 6 months after her family kicked her out. "This is what it's all about," Margaret said in her speech that night. "Not my comeback. Not my story, but making sure talented young people don't have to choose between their dreams and their survival. Making sure the next generation doesn't lose decades like I did." The audience applauded, but Margaret noticed something different this time. The applause felt like agreement, like commitment, like a promise that things would change, not everywhere, not for everyone. The world was still unfair. Systemic problems couldn't be fixed by one concert or one scholarship fund, but it was something. A crack in the wall, a light in the darkness. Margaret went home that night to her small apartment. The Steinway piano sat in her living room, taking up too much space and looking absolutely perfect there. She sat at it not to practice or perform, just to play, for herself, for the joy of it. She thought about that night at the mansion, how Mr. Patterson had asked her to play for fun, how condescending it had seemed, how small it had made her feel. But something good had come from it. Something unexpected. Her story had been told. Her talent had been recognized. And now she was using both to help others. Maybe that was the point all along. Not the concert halls, not the fame, but the impact, the difference she could make. She played softly a simple melody, something she'd made up years ago while cleaning houses, a tune that had kept her company through lonely days. It wasn't Rachmaninoff or Chopin. It wasn't brilliant or technically perfect, but it was hers, and that was enough. Outside her window, the city buzzed with life. Millions of people with their own stories, their own hidden talents, their own dreams deferred. Margaret couldn't help them all, but she could help some, and some was better than none. She smiled, her fingers moving across the keys, and played into the night. Not for an audience, not for applause, just for the pure joy of making music. After 53 years, through all the hardship and sacrifice, through all the dreams lost and found again, Margaret Williams was exactly where she needed to be. Playing piano, teaching others, making a difference, and most importantly, finally, beautifully, completely seen. The next 3 weeks were a blur. Margaret had to take time off from work, which terrified her at first. What if this all fell apart? What if she needed her job back? But Mr. Patterson surprised her. He called her personally. "Margaret, take all the time you need. Your position will be here when you want it. If you want it," he paused, "and I'm sorry. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about how I never asked about your life. You're right. I was wrong. Thank you," she said, not quite sure what else to say. "One more thing. The piano. The Steinway in the music room. I'd like you to have it." Margaret almost dropped her phone. "What?" "Mr. Patterson, that piano is worth, I know what it's worth. And I've never played it, not once. It's been sitting there like a museum piece. But you could make it sing, please. Let me do this one thing right." She accepted, tears in her eyes. 2 days later, movers arrived at her apartment with the massive instrument. Her neighbors came out to watch, amazed. Mrs. Chen from upstairs brought her tea. "I always knew you were special," she said, though Margaret was pretty sure she'd never given her a second thought before. The piano barely fit in her small living room. She had to move her couch and coffee table into her bedroom. But there it was, gleaming black, beautiful, hers. She sat at it that first night and played for hours. Her fingers remembered everything. The years fell away. She was young again, full of dreams, believing anything was possible. Dr. Chen became her coach, her mentor, her friend. He came over 3 times a week, listening to her practice, offering suggestions. "You're still brilliant," he'd say, "but let's work on this passage. Let's make it perfect." The media attention continued. More interviews, more stories. Some good, some sensationalized. One tabloid claimed she'd been homeless, which wasn't true. Another said Mr. Patterson had been abusive, which also wasn't true. Margaret tried to ignore them, but it was hard. Her face was everywhere. People recognized her at the grocery store. Some congratulated her. Others stared like she was a curiosity. Her daughters came to visit. They'd known their mother played piano, but they hadn't understood the depth of her talent or her sacrifice. "Why didn't you tell us?" her youngest asked, crying. "Because you were my dream," Margaret said, pulling her close. You and your sister. If I'd told you what I gave up, you would have felt guilty. And you did nothing wrong. You were my choice. My best choice. The GoFundMe kept climbing. 300,000, 400,000, 500,000. People from all over the world were donating. $5, $20, sometimes thousands. Each donation came with a message. My mother was a talented artist who never got her chance. This is for her. I gave up my dreams too. Thank you for showing it's never too late. For every talented person we've overlooked. For every gift we've wasted. Margaret read them all, overwhelmed by the kindness of strangers. But she also felt the weight of expectation. What if she failed? What if she got on that stage at Carnegie Hall and froze? What if she wasn't as good as everyone thought? Dr. Chen noticed her anxiety. You're afraid, he said one afternoon during practice. Of course I'm afraid. This is Carnegie Hall. Legendary performers have played there. And I'm just— Stop, he interrupted. You're not just anything. You're Margaret Williams. You won the Chopin competition at 16. You got into Juilliard on a full scholarship, and you've kept your talent alive through decades of hardship. You belong on that stage, but it wasn't just stage fright. It was something deeper. What if this is all for nothing? She asked quietly. What if I perform, everyone claps, and then it's over? I'm still 53. Still starting over. Still decades behind where I should be. Then you'll be 53 and playing music, he said simply, instead of 53 and wondering what if. That's not nothing, Margaret. That's everything. Meanwhile, the concert preparations were massive. Dr. Chen had assembled an incredible lineup. 3 famous pianists had agreed to perform. A local orchestra volunteered their time. The venue was donated. Every single ticket sold out in 48 hours. They added a second show. That sold out too. The money being raised was staggering. After expenses, Margaret would receive enough to live comfortably for years. The rest would go to the scholarship fund, helping students who faced medical emergencies or family crises while pursuing their education. Mr. Patterson's daughter, Diane, had become an unexpected ally. She'd taken a lot of criticism for posting that video without permission. Some people called her exploitative, but she stood by it. Margaret's story needed to be told, she said in interviews. And if I had to make my father uncomfortable to do it, so be it. Mr. Patterson himself had been doing his own soul-searching. The backlash had hurt, but it had also opened his eyes. He'd started actually talking to the people who worked for him. His gardener had a degree in biology but couldn't find work in his field. His driver was an immigrant who'd been a teacher in his home country. His chef had trained at a prestigious culinary school in France. All these talented people, working jobs below their qualifications because life had dealt them difficult cards. He'd never noticed, never thought to ask. Now he couldn't stop seeing it. He called Margaret 1 week before the concert. I want to do more, he said. The GoFundMe is wonderful, but I want to contribute something substantial to the scholarship fund. Is $500,000 too much? Margaret almost dropped the phone again. Mr. Patterson, that's incredibly generous. It's the least I can do. And please, call me Richard. I think we're past the formalities. The week before the concert, Margaret barely slept. She practiced until her fingers ached. She went through her wardrobe trying to find something suitable to wear. Everything was too casual, too worn, too much like the woman she'd been instead of the woman she was becoming. Diane showed up with a dress. Simple, elegant black with subtle beading. Try this, she said. It fit perfectly. Margaret looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. When had she last dressed up? When had she last looked like someone important? You're beautiful, Diane said. I'm terrified, Margaret admitted. Good. That means you care. That means it matters. 2 days before the concert, Margaret got a call from one of her old professors at Juilliard. Professor Morrison. He'd been her favorite teacher, the one who'd believed in her most. Margaret, I'm so sorry, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I should have fought harder for you. When you left, I should have pushed the administration to hold your spot. I should have raised money for you. I failed you. You didn't fail me, she said. Life happened. It wasn't anyone's fault. But I could have helped. I should have helped. I'm coming to the concert. Front row. I need to see this. I need to see you get the recognition you deserved all along. The night before the concert, Margaret couldn't practice anymore. Her fingers were tired. Her mind was racing. She sat at the piano, not playing, just sitting. Her daughter came over with dinner. They ate together in comfortable silence. Finally, her daughter said, "Mom, no matter what happens tomorrow, I'm proud of you. We all are. What if I mess up?" "Then you mess up. But you'll mess up at Carnegie Hall, doing what you love. That's still better than wondering what if for the rest of your life." Margaret nodded, tears in her eyes. That night, she dreamed of her mother. In the dream, they were at the hospital. But instead of being sick, her mother was healthy, smiling. "You did good, baby," she said. "You took care of me. You took care of your girls. And now it's time to take care of yourself. It's time to fly." Margaret woke up feeling peaceful for the first time in weeks. Today was the day. Carnegie Hall, one of the most famous concert venues in the world, and she was ready. Dr. Chen picked her up in the afternoon. The concert was at 7, but they wanted to do a sound check, walk through everything, make sure she felt comfortable on that stage. When Margaret walked into Carnegie Hall, she stopped breathing. The seats rose up like waves. The stage gleamed under lights. The piano waiting for her was a Steinway Model D, one of the finest concert grands in the world. "This is real," she whispered. "This is actually happening." "It's real," Dr. Chen confirmed. "And you're going to be magnificent." Backstage, the other performers came to meet her. These were people she'd only ever seen on recordings, famous pianists whose careers had taken the path hers should have. But they treated her like an equal, like a colleague, like she belonged. "Your story moved me to tears," one of them said. "I can't wait to hear you play." The hours ticked by. Makeup, hair, getting into that beautiful dress, standing in the wings, hearing the audience arrive, the murmur of voices, the excitement in the air. Margaret peeked out from backstage. The seats were full, every single one. She saw her daughters in the third row holding hands. She saw Mr. Patterson and Diane a few rows back. She saw Dr. Chen's family. She saw Professor Morrison in the front row, tears already streaming down his face. And scattered throughout the audience, she saw regular people. People who'd donated to the GoFundMe. People who'd been inspired by her story. People who'd given up their own dreams and wanted to see someone get theirs back. The house lights dimmed. The concert was about to begin. The party continued for another hour, but the mood had shifted. People talked in hushed voices. A few guests came up to Margaret, shaking her hand, apologizing for things they hadn't even done. Just apologizing for the world, maybe. For the unfairness of it all. When the last guest finally left, Mr. Patterson found Margaret in the kitchen. She was washing the champagne glasses by hand, even though they could go in the dishwasher. Old habits. "You don't have to do that tonight," he said awkwardly. "You've done enough." "I like to finish what I start," she replied, not looking up from the sink. He stood there for a moment, clearly wanting to say something but not knowing how. Finally, he just said, "Thank you for playing. It was beautiful." She nodded. "Good night, Mr. Patterson." Margaret went home to her small apartment on the other side of town. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, in a building that had seen better days. But it was hers. Well, she rented it, but it felt like hers. She made herself a cup of tea and sat on her worn couch, staring at nothing. The evening played over and over in her mind. The shock on their faces. The questions. Dr. Chen recognizing her after all these years. She'd worked so hard to bury that past life, and in one evening it had all come rushing back. What she didn't know was that Mr. Patterson had a daughter, Diane. She was 24, worked in marketing, and lived in the city. She'd stopped by that evening to drop off some papers for her father. She'd arrived late after most of the guests had gone, but she'd stood in the hallway and heard the whole conversation. Heard Margaret's story. Heard the pain in her voice, and she'd recorded it on her phone. Not the piano playing, unfortunately. She'd missed that. But she'd recorded Margaret talking about Juilliard, about her mother, about dreams deferred and talent hidden. She'd recorded her father's uncomfortable apology and Margaret's quiet dignity. Diane sat in her apartment that night, watching the video over and over. She thought about her own life. How easy it had been. College paid for. No debt. a job at her father's friend's company. She'd never had to choose between dreams and survival. Never had to sacrifice anything real. She opened her social media app and wrote a caption. "My father asked his housekeeper to play piano tonight as entertainment. He had no idea she was a Juilliard-trained prodigy who gave up everything to care for her dying mother. This is what inequality looks like. This is what systemic injustice looks like. Talent buried because life doesn't give everyone the same chances." She posted the video. Then she closed her phone and went to bed. By the time Margaret woke up the next morning, her life had changed again. Her phone was buzzing. Text messages from numbers she didn't recognize. Her daughter called, frantic. "Mom, are you okay? Are you online? You need to see this." Margaret didn't do social media much. She had an account, but she barely used it. Her daughter walked her through how to find the video. There it was. Her face, her voice, her story. And underneath, thousands of comments, thousands of shares. The video had been viewed over 100,000 times in just 8 hours. "Oh no," Margaret whispered. "Oh no, no, no." She read the comments. Some were supportive, some were angry at Mr. Patterson. Some were angry at the system, but some were cruel. People questioning if the story was real. People saying she was looking for sympathy. People saying if she was really that good, she would have found a way. The internet, she realized, was both wonderful and terrible at the same time. By noon, the video had hit 1 million views. News sites were picking it up. Hidden prodigy found working as maid. Juilliard graduate forced into service work. The American dream or American tragedy? Margaret's phone rang. A reporter from the local news station. Could they interview her? Then another call. A national morning show. Would she be willing to appear? She said no to all of them. She didn't want this. Didn't want to be a story. Didn't want to be a symbol of anything. She just wanted to go to work, play her music when she could, and live her quiet life. But the world had other plans. Dr. Chen called her that afternoon. "Margaret, I hope you don't mind. Diane gave me your number. I know this must be overwhelming." "That's one word for it," she said. "I want to help," he said. "This isn't right. Your talent shouldn't be hidden. I'm organizing something, a benefit concert. You as the featured performer. We can raise money, get you back on your feet properly." "Dr. Chen, I appreciate it, but I can't. I have a job. I have bills. I can't just—" "Trust me," he interrupted gently. "Just trust me on this. Give me 2 weeks, that's all I ask." Meanwhile, Mr. Patterson was dealing with his own crisis. The video showed him in the background, looking smug before Margaret played. It showed his face when he asked her to perform for fun. The internet had decided he was the villain of the story. His business phone was ringing off the hook. Articles were being written about him. Millionaire mocks his housekeeper's hidden talent. His country club membership was under review. His business partners were distancing themselves. He deserved some of it, he knew. He had been condescending. He had treated Margaret like entertainment. But he also felt it was unfair. He'd apologized. He paid her fairly. He wasn't a monster. Was he? His daughter came over that evening. "Dad, we need to talk." "You posted that video," he said. "It wasn't a question." "I did, and I'm not sorry. Margaret deserved to have her story told. But did you think about what it would do? To her? To me?" Diane sat down across from him. "Dad, this isn't about you. For once in your life, this isn't about you. It's about a woman who had incredible talent and lost everything through no fault of her own. It's about a system that rewards people like us and crushes people like her. And yes, maybe you're uncomfortable right now, but maybe that's what needs to happen." He stared at his daughter. When had she gotten so bold? When had she started seeing the world so clearly? "What do I do?" he asked quietly. "You help. Really help. Not just write a check and feel better. Actually do something meaningful." Back in her apartment, Margaret was reading comments on the video. Most were supportive now. The negative ones had been drowned out. But one comment caught her eye. "I started a GoFundMe for Margaret Williams. Let's give her back her dream. She clicked the link. Dr. Chen had created it. Help Margaret Williams return to music. The title read. This talented pianist sacrificed her career to care for her mother. Let's show her that her talent matters. Let's give her the chance she never got. The goal was set at $50,000, enough to cover a year without working, he'd written, enough to let her focus on music again. In the first hour, it had raised $20,000. By evening, it was at $100,000. Margaret sat on her couch crying. Not sad tears, not exactly happy tears either. Something in between. Overwhelmed tears, grateful tears, scared tears. Her daughter called again. Mom, have you seen it? Have you seen how much people care? I see it, Margaret whispered. I just don't understand it. Why now? Why do they care now? Because they didn't know before, her daughter said. No one knew. You've been invisible for so long and now they see you. They really see you. The next morning, a news crew showed up at Margaret's apartment. She'd said no to interviews, but they came anyway. Knocked on her door. Asked for just a few minutes. Against her better judgment, she let them in. The reporter was young, maybe 30, with bright eyes and a sympathetic smile. Ms. Williams, thank you for talking to us. The whole country is talking about your story. How does it feel? How did it feel? Margaret thought about that question. How did it feel to have your private pain made public? How did it feel to become a symbol when you just wanted to be a person? It feels strange, she said honestly. I'm grateful for the support. I truly am. But I worry that tomorrow everyone will forget. The internet moves fast. Something else will come along and I'll just be yesterday's story. But what if you're not? The reporter asked. What if this is your chance? Your second chance at the dream you lost? Margaret looked at the camera, looked at all the people who might be watching. I gave up that dream a long time ago, she said quietly. I had to. You can't hold on to dreams when you're trying to survive, but maybe I can have a different dream now. Maybe I can teach, share what I know, help other young people who might face what I faced. The interview aired that evening. Margaret watched it in her apartment, feeling strange seeing herself on TV. She looked older than she felt. Tired, but also strong. She'd survived. That counted for something. The GoFundMe passed $200,000 that night. Dr. Chen called her again. Margaret, this is happening. The concert is scheduled for 3 weeks from now. Carnegie Hall. Carnegie Hall? She could barely breathe. That's impossible. How did you? I know people. And everyone wants to help. Famous pianists are offering to perform. All proceeds go to you and to a scholarship fund we're setting up. The Margaret Williams Fund for students facing family emergencies, she wanted to argue. Wanted to say it was too much. But maybe, just maybe, it was exactly right. The applause kept going. Margaret stood there, cloth still in her hand, not quite sure what to do. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. She was the help. She wasn't supposed to be the center of attention. She wasn't supposed to make people stare. But they were staring now. All of them. And not in the way they had before, when she was just part of the furniture. They were looking at her like she was someone. Someone real. Someone who mattered. Mr. Patterson finally found his voice. He set his champagne glass down carefully, like he needed both hands free to process what had just happened. Where on earth did you learn to play like that? His voice wasn't mocking anymore. It was genuine. Almost respectful. That was incredible. Margaret felt something crack inside her chest. A wall she'd built up over years and years. She was tired. Tired of being invisible. Tired of pretending she was just the woman who cleaned the floors. Maybe it was time. Maybe after all these years of silence, it was finally time. Juilliard, she said simply. I studied at Juilliard. The room erupted again. This time with gasps and exclamations. Juilliard? The Juilliard? One of the most prestigious music schools in the world? The woman who cleaned their houses had studied there? You're joking, one of the women said. She had red hair and diamonds around her neck. That's not possible. It's true, Margaret said. Her voice was stronger now. I was accepted on a full scholarship in 1993. I was going to be a concert pianist. The man with the bow tie stepped forward. He was older, maybe in his 60s, with kind eyes behind those glasses. Wait, he said slowly. Margaret Williams. Is that you? She looked at him, really looked at him. Something about him seemed familiar, but she couldn't place it. I'm Harold Chen, he said. Dr. Harold Chen. I teach at the university. But before that, I was on the judging panel for the International Chopin Competition Youth Division. That was 1992. He shook his head in disbelief. You won. You were 16 years old and you played better than people twice your age. I remember thinking we were watching the beginning of a legendary career. Margaret felt tears prick her eyes. To God, that felt like a lifetime ago. Another world. Another version of herself. You remember me? She asked quietly. Remember you? Margaret, you were unforgettable. We all said so. You had something special. Not just technique, though God knows you had that. You played with soul, with heart. He looked around at the other guests, then back at her. What happened? We all wondered. One day you were there, the next you were gone. You just disappeared. The room had gone quiet again. Waiting, everyone wanted to know. How does someone go from Juilliard to cleaning houses? How does that happen? Margaret took a breath. She'd never told this story to anyone here. Never thought she would, but maybe it was time. Maybe these people who had everything handed to them needed to understand how quickly life could take everything away. My mother got sick, she said. Second year at Juilliard right before finals. The doctor said it was cancer. Stage 3. She needed treatment right away. She could still remember that phone call. Standing in the practice room, her phone buzzing. Her aunt's voice on the other end trying to sound calm but failing. Your mama's sick, baby. Real sick. You need to come home. I came home to take care of her, Margaret continued. Took a leave from school. I thought it would be temporary. Just a semester, maybe 2, but she needed full-time care. The treatments were expensive. Really expensive. And we didn't have insurance. Not the kind that covered what she needed. The woman with the diamonds had stopped looking skeptical. She was just listening now, her face softer. I got a job. Then another job. Worked doubles when I could. Paid for her medication. Paid for her treatments. Drove her to every appointment. Held her hand through the bad nights. Margaret's voice cracked just a little. She fought hard. 8 months. But in the end, the cancer won. Mrs. Patterson, Mr. Patterson's late wife, would have understood. She'd been kind. One of the few truly kind, wealthy people Margaret had ever met. But she was gone too. Cancer had taken her as well. I'm so sorry, Dr. Chen said softly. That must have been devastating. Margaret nodded. It was, but you know what was worse? After she passed, after the funeral, after everything, I tried to go back. Called the school. Explained what happened. Asked if I could return, and? Someone asked. They said my scholarship had been given to someone else. I'd been gone too long. No exceptions. I could reapply, they said. Go through the whole process again. But by then, I had $60,000 in medical debt. Collection agencies calling every day. I couldn't afford to reapply. Couldn't afford the application fees, let alone tuition if I didn't get another full ride. She looked around the room, at their designer clothes and expensive jewelry, at Mr. Patterson's mansion with its crystal and marble and that piano that probably cost more than her mother's entire medical treatment. So I kept working, paid off the debt. It took years. And somewhere along the way, being a concert pianist stopped being something I was going to do and started being something I used to dream about. The silence was heavy. No one knew what to say. What do you say to something like that? How do you respond when you realize that talent and dreams aren't enough? That sometimes life just crushes them under the weight of circumstances? But you kept playing, Dr. Chen said. It wasn't a question. You had to have kept playing. You can't play like that without practice, Margaret smiled. Just a little. Church basement on Sundays. Community center on Tuesday nights when they let me use their piano. Sometimes I'd play at nursing homes. The residents liked it, said it reminded them of better times. But that's not the same as a concert hall, Mr. Patterson said. He looked uncomfortable. Guilty, maybe. That's not a career. That's not what you trained for. No, Margaret agreed. It's not. But it paid nothing, and I needed money. So I cleaned houses, including this one. One of the younger guests, a woman in her 30s with short black hair, spoke up. That's not fair. None of that is fair. Margaret let out a breath that was almost a laugh. No, it's not. But fair doesn't pay the bills. Fair doesn't keep the lights on or food on the table. You do what you have to do. Dr. Chen was shaking his head. This is exactly what's wrong with our system. We tell young people to follow their dreams, but we don't support them when life happens. No safety net, no help. Just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and somehow survive. Mr. Patterson's face had gone red. He picked up his champagne glass, then set it down again without drinking. Margaret, I had no idea. If I'd known, I would never have what? She asked. Not angry, just tired. Never have asked me to play? Never have treated me like entertainment? Or never have hired someone with my background to clean your toilets? He flinched. Actual pain crossed his face. I don't say that to hurt you, Margaret said more gently. I say it because it's true. You've paid me fairly. You've never been cruel, but you've also never asked me anything about my life. In 3 years, you've never wondered who I was before I started working here. And that's not unusual. That's just how it is. The woman with the red hair spoke up. I have a housekeeper, Teresa. She's worked for me for 5 years. She looked down at her hands. I don't know if she has kids. I don't know where she's from. I don't even know her last name. I have 2 daughters, Margaret said quietly. They're grown now. One's a nurse. The other teaches elementary school. Both of them got through college because I worked 3 jobs. They don't know how much I gave up. I never told them. What's the point of making them feel guilty for my choices? Dr. Chen stepped closer. Margaret, it's not too late. You're what, 52? 53 next month. Still young. You could still perform. Still teach. Share that gift with others. She shook her head. Dr. Chen, I appreciate that, I do. But the world of classical music isn't kind to 53-year-old black women who've been out of the game for 30 years. There are 20-year-old prodigies out there, fresh out of conservatories, without my baggage. That's ridiculous, he said firmly. What you just played proves you're at the top of your field. Age doesn't matter. Background doesn't matter. That kind of talent is rare. Talent isn't rare, Margaret corrected him. Talent is everywhere. In people who clean houses and drive buses and work night shifts. What's rare is opportunity. What's rare is someone giving you a chance when life has knocked you down. The room had gone quiet again. These people who'd come here for champagne and small talk were getting a lesson they hadn't expected. About privilege. About talent wasted. About how many brilliant people never got to shine because they were too busy surviving. Mr. Patterson cleared his throat. Margaret, I feel terrible. I asked you to play as a joke. To entertain my guests. I had no idea I was asking someone of your caliber. And if I'd just been someone who played a little piano for fun? She asked. Would that have made it okay? He didn't have an answer for that. Margaret had been cleaning the Patterson mansion for 3 years now. Every Thursday she'd arrive at 6 in the morning, put on her uniform and start her day the same way. Dust the library, vacuum the sitting rooms, polish the silverware until it gleamed. By the time the sun fully rose, she'd already been working for 2 hours. The Patterson estate wasn't just big. It was the kind of place that made you feel small the moment you walked in. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings so high you'd get dizzy looking up. Marble floors stretched out like frozen lakes. And everywhere you looked, there was something expensive. Paintings that cost more than most people's houses. Furniture that belonged in museums. A wine collection that could probably feed a family for years. But of all the expensive things in that house, there was one that caught Margaret's eye every single time. The piano. A Steinway grand piano, black and glossy, sitting in the music room like a sleeping giant. She dusted carefully, running her cloth over the smooth surface, her fingers sometimes hovering just above the keys. She never touched them. That wasn't her place. At least that's what she told herself. Mr. Patterson, the owner of all this wealth, had made his fortune in real estate. Buy low, sell high, and somehow always know which neighborhoods were about to boom. He was 58, with silver hair he was probably a little too proud of, and the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. His wife had passed away 2 years ago, and since then the house felt even emptier than before. Too big for one man, but he kept it anyway. Maybe because selling it would mean admitting something had changed. That Thursday evening was different, though. Mr. Patterson was having people over. Not a big party, just 8 or 9 guests. Business associates, he'd called them. Margaret had spent the afternoon preparing. Fresh flowers in every room. The good champagne chilling in silver buckets. Little appetizers arranged on trays like tiny works of art. By 7 o'clock, the guests started arriving. Men in expensive suits. Women in dresses that probably cost what Margaret made in a month. They laughed in that polite way rich people laugh, where you can't quite tell if they're actually amused or just being nice. Margaret moved between them like a shadow, refilling glasses, collecting empty plates, staying invisible. That was the thing about being a housekeeper in a place like this. You learned to be invisible. They'd talk right in front of you about things they'd never say if they actually saw you as a person. Affairs, business deals that sounded illegal, complaints about their kids who just don't understand the value of money. Margaret had heard it all. She'd learned to keep her face blank, her opinions to herself. Around 8:30, most of the guests had gathered in the music room. It was Mr. Patterson's favorite room to entertain in. Big windows overlooking the garden, that gorgeous piano, a fireplace made from Italian marble. Margaret was in there too, quietly making her rounds, picking up empty glasses, wiping down surfaces. She was near the piano, dusting the windowsill, when Mr. Patterson noticed her. He'd had a few glasses of champagne. Not drunk, but looser than usual. Feeling generous, maybe. Or maybe just bored with his own party. "Margaret," he called out suddenly. His voice cut through the quiet conversations. "Come here a moment." She turned, cloth still in her hand. Every eye in the room shifted to her. She could feel their gazes like weight on her shoulders. "Yes, sir," she said, walking over. He was leaning against the mantel, champagne glass in hand, that easy smile on his face. "Tell me something. Have you ever played piano?" The question hung in the air. A few of the guests exchanged glances. One woman raised her eyebrows. Margaret could feel her heart beating faster. "I have, sir," she answered. Her voice was quiet but steady. "Really?" He seemed delighted by this, like he'd discovered something amusing. "Well, isn't that something? How about you play us a little tune, just for fun, entertainment for the evening?" There was a ripple of laughter from some of the guests. Nervous laughter, uncertain laughter, the kind that people make when they're not sure if something is funny or cruel. But they want to be on the right side of whoever's in charge. Margaret stood there, cloth in hand, uniform crisp and clean, looking at this man who paid her bills but didn't really see her. She could feel the moment stretching out. She could say no, make an excuse, keep that invisible wall right where it had always been. But something stirred inside her. Something she'd buried deep a long time ago, pride maybe, or hurt, or just exhaustion from being invisible. "All right," she said simply. "I'll play something." She walked to the piano, her sensible work shoes quiet on the marble floor. Behind her she heard whispers. Someone giggled. She could imagine what they were thinking. This should be good. The help thinks she can play. How charming. How quaint. Margaret set her cleaning cloth down on a side table. She sat on the piano bench, adjusting it slightly. The keys gleamed under the chandelier light. She'd dusted these keys 1,000 times, but never touched them like this. Never like they were hers to play. She looked at those keys, and suddenly she wasn't 52 anymore. She was 20, sitting at a piano in a practice room at Juilliard. She was 17, winning a competition that was supposed to change her life. She was 8, falling in love with music for the first time. Her hands moved to the keys. She didn't look at the audience behind her. Didn't think about Mr. Patterson or his smug smile, or the way those women had looked at her uniform. She closed her eyes, and then she played. The first notes of Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 filled the room. Not tentative, not simple. The real thing, complex, powerful, technically perfect. Her fingers moved across the keys like they'd never stopped, like 27 years hadn't passed since she'd last played seriously. Every note precise, every phrase filled with emotion. The whispers behind her stopped. The laughter died. The whole room went silent except for the music. Margaret's whole body moved with the piece. Her shoulders swayed. Her head tilted. She'd forgotten how it felt. This connection between heart and hands and sound. She'd forgotten how music could take everything inside you and pour it out into the world. All the years of scrubbing floors and swallowing pride and pretending not to hear the things people said. All the dreams she'd buried. All the talent she'd hidden. It all came out through her fingers on those keys. She played for 6 minutes. 6 minutes of the most beautiful, technically brilliant piano playing most of these people had ever heard in person, not on a recording, not at a concert hall. Right here, right now, from the woman they'd barely noticed carrying their champagne glasses. When she played the final note, letting it echo and fade in the silent room, she opened her eyes. Kept her hands on the keys for just a moment. Then she stood up, smoothed her uniform, and turned around. The room was frozen. Mr. Patterson stood exactly where he'd been, but his expression had completely changed. His mouth was slightly open. His champagne glass tilted in his hand like he'd forgotten he was holding it. The woman who'd giggled earlier had tears running down her face. A man near the back, wearing glasses and a bow tie, was shaking his head slowly like he couldn't believe what he'd just witnessed. No one spoke. No one moved. They just stared at her. Margaret picked up her cleaning cloth from the side table. Her hands were steady, but inside her heart was pounding so hard she thought everyone could hear it. "Will that be all, sir?" she asked quietly. The spell broke. Suddenly everyone was talking at once. Applause erupted, genuine this time, not polite party clapping. Real applause, the kind you give when you've just witnessed something extraordinary.